Have you ever sat quietly and wondered why some women stand out completely even in a crowd of thousands? Their way of talking, their perspective on seeing things, and even some of their habits that the world often considers weird, are actually a huge sign of their extremely sharp minds. We often create this image in our minds that very smart people must always remain very serious or constantly be buried in books. But the reality of actual life is quite different from this and much more fascinating. Today I'm going to tell you deeply about 10 such weird habits of highly intelligent women that at first glance might seem a bit awkward or strange to anyone, but in reality they are solid proof of a genius and extraordinary mind. If you are also a woman, or if there is such a woman around you whose behavior you want to understand, there is a very high probability that you are unknowingly living these habits in your everyday life. These are not just empty words in the air, but signs verified by psychology and science that determine the biggest difference between a normal mind and an extraordinary mind. So let us lift the curtain on this beautiful mystery of human nature without any delay and see if you also fall into this special category. The first weird habit that is often seen in women with very sharp minds is talking to themselves. Yes, you heard that absolutely right. When a woman mutters in isolation or gives herself verbal instructions while doing some work, the people around her often label it as madness or mental stress. Society feels that a person who is talking to themselves is probably feeling lonely. But science says the exact opposite. Talking to yourself is actually a wonderfully magnificent and effective way to calm the mind and untangle twisted thoughts. When hundreds of thoughts are running simultaneously in the mind of a sharp-witted woman, keeping them only in the mind creates a terrible confusion. Therefore, molding those countless thoughts into words and bringing them out through the tongue makes it much easier for them to make the right decisions. This is a kind of natural self-therapy that women with sharp minds adopt unknowingly. When they talk to themselves, they are actually giving a proper shape to their future plans. The second habit that is considered a little weird in the eyes of society is staying awake late at night. Since childhood, we are always taught that sleeping early and waking up early is the biggest key to success, and people who stay awake late at night are often considered lazy or shirkers. But it has been completely proven in many psychological researches that people with extreme intelligence often feel much more energetic and active during the night. That deep silence and peace of the night give a sharp-minded woman the full opportunity to safely dive into the depths of her thoughts. When the whole world is fast asleep in a deep slumber and there is absolute peace everywhere, their mind works in the most creative way. Away from the noise of the entire day and the unnecessary interference of people, this is that special time when they make new plans for themselves, untangle their old confusions, and give a new flight to their imagination. The third habit can be a bit surprising, and that is a scattered room or a messy desk. We have always associated cleanliness and keeping everything in its place with discipline and wisdom. But a very famous research from the University of Minnesota has proven that people who work in messy environments have minds that are more creative and give birth to completely new ideas. The mind of an intelligent woman is always engaged in some new puzzle. Therefore, her focus is much more on her new ideas than on organizing her closet or perfectly decorating things in their exact places. To any person looking from the outside, that room might seem very scattered and dirty. But even in that mess, that woman has her own special system where she finds everything she needs instantly without searching. Her mind establishes amazing coordination even in that chaotic space. The fourth weird habit is overthinking or going very deep into every little detail. Where ordinary people easily forget after hearing something or seeing an incident, a smart woman analyzes every single aspect of that matter very closely. Who said what? Why they said it? What could be the real meaning behind that statement? And what could be its consequences in the future? All such questions constantly revolve in her mind like a movie. This habit sometimes becomes a cause of trouble for her because it creates unnecessary mental stress. But in reality, this is an innate preparation of her mind to deal with every potential danger or upcoming difficult situation. She never does any work without thinking about the pros and cons, and she always keeps a second option ready with her. So far we have talked about the habits I mentioned, and I am absolutely sure that you must have seen some of these habits within yourself or in the behavior of a close friend, and maybe you are even smiling thinking that what you considered your flaws until today are actually your biggest strengths. But the things I am going to tell you next are even more fascinating and mysterious. Especially the next few upcoming habits will completely amaze you because the whole world considers those habits as a person's biggest weakness, whereas if you look deeply, it is a massive strength. So keep your mind completely open and read every single word very carefully, because it is possible that the very next point might directly reveal the biggest secret of your personality and change your perspective of thinking. The fifth habit is loving solitude intensely. A highly intelligent woman absolutely never likes to always be surrounded by a crowd of people or go to parties every single weekend. They prefer to spend quiet time with themselves the most. They never feel boredom or emptiness in their own company, because their own sharp mind is their best friend. In solitude, they pursue their favorite hobbies, read new books, or just sit quietly looking at nature while completely lost in their deep thoughts. Ordinary people think that such women are arrogant or lack the ability to mingle in society. But the truth is that this free time is like recharging their mental battery for them so that they can once again face this noisy world with full positive energy. Hearing the sixth habit, maybe you will once again be able to connect yourself with it. This habit is suddenly forgetting small everyday things, like where the house keys are kept, having your own glasses on your head, and looking for them like crazy all over the house, or suddenly losing the name of a very familiar person from your mind while speaking. Society often names this as the effect of growing age or a person's carelessness, but the science behind this tells a completely different story. A very sharp mind is always busy processing big, complex, and more important things. The storage of their mind is so full of highly crucial information that sometimes these small and everyday unnecessary things suddenly slip from their mind. This is not a serious disease of forgetting, but a very big and clear sign that their mind is completely busy solving a very deep and major problem at that moment. The seventh habit is questioning everything and always maintaining a strange curiosity within oneself. An intelligent woman never blindly accepts anything as the truth, just because everyone else in society is blindly accepting it, or because that thing has been going on as an old tradition for centuries. They have a never-ending desire to know, just like a small child. They want to know the real logic and science behind every rule, every old tradition, and every little or big thing, until they find a solid and completely satisfying reason for something. They absolutely do not accept that thing. This habit of theirs sometimes bothers the people around them a lot, because most people do not like answering so many questions or having long arguments over their old beliefs at all. But these are the sharp questions that make them completely different from the blind sheep following crowd of the world and make them far more sensible and logical. The eighth habit is easily understanding sarcasm and using very deep humor. Casually making such jokes that fly completely over the heads of ordinary people is a huge and solid sign of a very high IQ level. To understand sarcasm and speak it at exactly the right time, a person's mind has to work very fast. It involves understanding the double meaning of the spoken words and guessing the mental state of the other person in a split second. An intelligent woman's method of joking is so sharp and perfectly accurate that many times the other person cannot even understand whether they were complimented or very smartly insulted with a smile. They have the amazing ability to lighten the mood with this special skill of theirs, even in the most difficult and stressful situations. Now here I want to share a very important thing with you. Human psychology clearly states that the human subconscious mind is always rapidly attracted to those things or words that completely match its own personality or that accurately describe its reality. If you are reading this very carefully so far and feeling a very deep and true connection with every single word of it, then it simply means that your subconscious mind has completely accepted that your mind is also much sharper and completely different from the minds of ordinary people. To testify to this sharp mind of yours and to accept this magnificent identity of yours in front of the whole world, press the like button right now and comment below to tell me which of these habits is filled to the brim inside you. Your one small comment and like will prove that you are way ahead of millions of other people in the world in recognizing your true strength, and you have absolutely no shame but full pride in these weird habits of yours. Let us now take this thrilling journey a little further and talk about the ninth habit, which is having strange daydreams while sitting during the day, or suddenly getting lost somewhere else entirely in the middle of people's conversations. You might be talking face to face with a very smart woman, and suddenly you feel that she is physically sitting right in front of you, but mentally she has reached a completely different world miles away. In psychological language, this is called a complete lapse of attention, or zoning out. This weird habit is mostly found in people whose minds very rapidly create different and new imaginations. In a single moment, they can easily jump from one topic to a completely different second topic. Their mind continuously creates and destroys new scenarios. Therefore, they are often seen lost in the world of their own thoughts. This is not a disease, but a very clear and beautiful sign of their sharp mind continuously working without getting tired. And finally, the 10th weird habit on our list is procrastinating your important tasks, or starting them with a lot of delay. Usually you would think that a sensible and smart person would always do all their work absolutely on time and before everyone else. But the story of reality is a bit different and complicated. Very smart women often have the nature of doing every task perfectly. They want to complete every single task they take in their hands excellently and without any small mistake. And in this desire for perfection, they often delay starting any new task a lot because they keep thinking very deeply about its every small aspect, every upcoming result, and every little or big detail. This is not common laziness or shirking, but a massive mental pressure to do any task 100% correctly, which their own sharp mind has constantly put on them. They do not take their first step until they are completely assured. So these were those 10 weird but absolutely true habits that are the real identity of an extremely intelligent and sharp-minded woman. No matter how weird the world considers these habits, calls them madness, or considers them unnecessary, the truth is that these are the little things that make an ordinary person completely extraordinary. If some of these habits are also present in you, then stop doubting yourself and cursing yourself from today onwards. Do not forcibly try to mold yourself into the old molds made by society, because your mind is woven in a very special and different way. Recognize this unique specialty of yours, embrace it with all your heart, and let the whole world acknowledge this real shine and sharp mind of yours.
Before I get into the material that's actually happening in the White House and so on, I wanted to just throw out there, a lot of you asked about the stories going around about the missing or dead scientists. And I would urge you to take that with a really, really major grain of salt. I am not an investigative person myself, but from what I'm reading, it sounds like one of those ways in which people are trying to make sense of their world, especially from something, this idea that there's something nefarious out there because so much is confusing and going on out there. And people have compared it to the stories about the curse of King Tutankhamun's tomb. When that was opened, they had similar stories of scientists and the people who were responsible for going into that tomb dying in unusual numbers and so on. And just statistically, that wasn't true at all. And the same is usually, not always, but usually true when you hear stories of there being an unusual cluster of deaths geographically, for example. Usually it's well within statistical norms. And so on that one, I don't think I'd lose a lot of sleep over it. Now, I absolutely could be wrong. Like I say, I'm not an investigative journalist, but the patterns are very, very similar to what we usually see in a time like this. So I'd take that one with a little bit of a grain of salt. But it's important to recognize that often that frustration that shows in conspiracy theories is a reflection, obviously, of society. And the other great conspiracy theory we have had in the last few days is the idea that what happened at the Washington Hilton with the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday was staged. And I'm going to put that in air quotes without actually giving you the air quotes. And what's interesting about that is multifold. First of all, the fact that many media outlets are calling it a shooting is really interesting because, of course, there wasn't a shooting. that we know of, except potentially from the agents. That is, it appears that shots were fired, but they were fired at the perpetrator who ran through the magnetometers, and that it does not appear anyway from the Department of Justice's court filings so far, which I'm reading really closely. They're going out of their way not to say who actually fired the shot that appears to have ended up, at least a fragment of a shot, in the vest, the bulletproof vest of the Secret Service agent who was there. So the fact that people are calling this a shooting and talking about an assassination attempt is just not accurate. It's interesting that we have gotten there, and this shows the power of repetition, the power of hearing something again and again and again. So people just automatically throw down the word. They keep calling the perpetrator a shooter. It's not clear he was a shooter. He was armed with a shotgun, he was armed with knives, and he was armed with one other type of a gun, but he was also running. And it's not clear at all that he actually fired any shots. So there was a spent cartridge in the shotgun he was carrying, but they can't seem to find any evidence that there was a shotgun cartridge fired. So who knows where that's going to go? But what that has done, interestingly enough, is that event has become sort of a blank slate. People are writing on it whatever they want to see. And what's really dramatic on that is the degree to which the administration and supporters of the administration have tried to say that what they are calling an assassination attempt, is the fault of those people who are speaking out against this administration. And that's a really hard lift, because, in fact, the people who are speaking out against this administration, people like me, are actually pretty clear we are not advocating violence. While Trump, on the other hand, has called for, executions and so on. And it's just not flying this time. And I think that's significant, because to me, what that ballroom incident really reflects, when I think about it, is after Trump took office in his first term, his insistence that his inauguration audience was bigger than that of Barack Obama's, which you could see was not true. I mean, you didn't have to be somebody out there with, a clicker to see that he was lying, that was not true. And if you remember, they kept sending Sean Spicer out there to insist that it was true. And, this constant repetition that he had to have the biggest inaugural crowd ever. And that was not just his thin skin talking. That was an attempt of a budding authoritarian to force people to accept as truth things that were not true. And, if you remember, there was some pushback on that, and people are like, why are you lying? And even laughing at him. And they kept, with a straight face, insisting that. And the reason for that is that this is how authoritarians assert their authority over a population, to say things that are not true, that everybody knows are not true, but that people don't speak up against because they're not willing to put their necks out. And that, to me, is one of the major points of what is going on with this attempt to call this an assassination attempt, and to insist that it's the Democrats and the opponents of the administration, who, by the way, are reaching far beyond the Democrats. Independents are against Trump, and even a significant number of Republicans are. New poll today had him at 32%. We're into new hatred territory here for any American president. So what they're trying to do is to demonize the vast majority of Americans as enemies of the state. And that's obviously an incredibly dangerous thing for those people on this side of the equation. But it's also, I think, operating from an extraordinary position of weakness. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So the thing about the ballroom is there's a lot of stuff going on. The money is not okay there. There's funny stuff going on. And Trump seems to have fixated on the ballroom for a number of reasons. And one of them, I think, is that he desperately, desperately, desperately needs to reassert his authority over the United States and over the Congress. And certainly members of Congress, the Republican members of Congress, sort of jumped to attention and yesterday produced bills or arguments for bills that would build the ballroom and the American people would pay for it. Remember, all the time you kept hearing that this was going to be paid for by private money and so on, and lots of people put money into the ballroom. And now they're saying, well, we're actually going to use taxpayer money for that. And that is the fact that he got Republican members of Congress to jump up and say, okay, we'll do this for you, is significant. It is politically significant that they are willing to go out on this limb with him. And in the Senate, that move is being led by Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, the Republican of South Carolina. So that need to have a win of any sort is, I think, what's the big story, one of the big stories behind the ballroom. And, when I think about, usually when I think about anything that happens, I think of it in terms of books. Like, if you were going to write a book about this period, how would you get into it? How would you do it? And you could actually write a book about the ballroom. And I don't mean literally about the ballroom. I mean about all the things that this ballroom is coming to symbolize in this moment for the American people. As I say, there's financial stuff, there's psychological stuff, there's television stuff, there's all kinds of things wrapped into this ballroom. But and there's the real dramatic point that America doesn't trust its government to tell the truth any longer, as shown by the conspiracy theories around the idea that this was staged. There's a lot of stuff going on around this ballroom. But what I want to pick up today is that thread of Trump needing a win, because if you stop for a minute and stop thinking about the news, think about what is happening around the administration right now. So just today, we have heard that Trump's people are issuing new passports, allegedly for the 250th celebration of the Declaration of Independence, that have Trump's face on them. They're trying to assert Trump's authority in really dramatic, visible ways. So the passports, for example, that you are going to literally have to carry his face with you when you go to other countries for however long a passport lasts. They have gone in front of Congress to ask for an official name change. Remember, the idea of calling the Department of Defense the Department of War is made up. The name of that institution is determined by Congress, and Congress has not changed that name. So even though the members of the administration have been insisting it's the Department of War, it's not. It's still the Department of Defense, even though Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, insisted on a number of name changes on name plaques and on symbols around the Department of Defense. It's still the Department of Defense. So they actually went in front of Congress today and asked, or not in front of Congress, they went to Congress and asked for an official name change, turn the Department of Defense into the Department of War to the tune of $52 million. So, they're trying to put his stamp on stuff, and they're doing so in these really heavy-handed ways, I think, because the administration is in such bad shape right now. So before I get into talking about what that means for Trump, I want to point out that this week is the week of, it's April 28th. This week, the Congress has to pass a number of pieces of legislation. And this is Tuesday, and